talking about embedding sustainability in the supply chain, and you'll see various logos as we go through this slide presentation. One of them is Ready for Business. So just to say that I'm also part of a consortium developing markets for third sector providers, which is a Scottish Government funded programme, which, that's what it says on the tin, helping to support third sector organisations, social enterprises, supported businesses and others do business with the public sector and vice versa, so both sides of the coin. I'm going to talk about supply chain in particular for obvious reasons. So could I ask for a show of hands, who in the audience this afternoon is from supplier contractor side? Who am I talking to from the business community? Good, nice, healthy. I'm going to talk about embedding sustainability in all we do. It's a line, it's a strap line. It has a particular significance for Scottish Government. So I'm not talking on behalf of Scottish Government. I better get that out loud and clear from minute one. So things I say are not necessarily Scottish Government policy, Scottish Government line. I work with them, but not for them, if you see what I mean. Procurement's changing, and I've been in it a long time, public procurement, and it's changing for the better. I like to think we're going places, things are beginning to happen, and we are all part of that process. I need to talk about procurement reform and the Procurement Reform Scotland Act 2014, which I believe Sandy this morning described as a cure for insomnia. Yes, it probably is. I don't intend to quote sections and articles from the Act, but there is a lot in the Act to go for if you are a supplier, if you're a contractor looking to do business with the Scottish public sector. So I'm going to focus on the good bits. There are opportunities in there. The law is the law. It's the opportunities we're going to look at in particular. Which brings me neatly to the opportunities part. So the opportunities, there is a 10 billion plus public sector spend to chase here. You want a share of that. We all want a share of that. I've got to declare I am a small business and I'm doing work. A lot of our work is with the Scottish Government, with Zero Waste Scotland, with various parts of the Scottish public sector. So what we want to do, just like many of you in this room, is align ourselves with what the agenda is looking like in the future, what Scottish Government, what Scottish public sector bodies are looking to do, and appeal to them to say this is what we can do for you. Okay, if we're talking about the £10 billion of public sector spend, we know how it's broken down, broadly speaking. Hands up any of you from construction sector or the facilities management sector? Anyone? Yeah, one or two of you. Anyone supplying health products, healthcare products, social care? Anyone from the social care agenda? Anyone else that I haven't covered? ICT? Yeah, I think, okay, we've got a fair old spread in there. So those are the top spend items in public sectors in Scotland and in many countries that I do business with. So let's see what's in it for all of us. Allowing some questions at the end. Now, I said embedding sustainability in all we do has a special significance. Right in the heart of that triangle, all of those triangles, which form a bigger triangle, is the phrase embedding sustainability in all we do. Now, the traditional stuff is round the outside. I call it traditional. They wouldn't, but I'm calling it traditional. So it's looking at where are the savings, where are the benefits that we can deliver, how can we open markets for suppliers to make it easier for suppliers to do business with the Scottish public sector. And we've heard a lot today about maximising efficiency, collaboration, a lot of what Scotland Excel is all about, and other parts of the Scottish public sector. But I'm talking specifically about the heart of that, and I don't think it's any accident that sustainability is at the middle, at the core, at the heart of that triangle. And bear in mind, we're talking about the economic, the social, and the environmental. I can't stress often enough this afternoon, it's that three-part set. And yes, it can be a challenge finding the appropriate balance. There is a certain tension sometimes between are we saving money or are we doing something more sustainable? Sometimes they go absolutely hand in hand, and sometimes they don't. Where they go hand in hand, the obvious ones, of course, carbon reduction, we're saving energy and we're saving CO2 emissions, we're bringing them down, and at the same time we save money. But there are other more subtle ways of delivering better value for the public purse, delivering sustainable procurement, making savings along the way. You don't have to take my word for it. I'm going to show you examples that have been quoted, and indeed some of them have won awards today as to how we get that. Okay, just to reinforce the point then, what you're looking for, what we're all looking for, is addressing not just the socioeconomic. So let's take the socioeconomic element, the right-hand side. Health and well-being, communities, security and crime, ethical and fair trade, equalities. All of those things are what we have categorised as the intended outcomes of organisations in the Scottish public sector around what I call the socioeconomic agenda. So economy is in there, savings need to be there, but there are other social intended outcomes, which all of us need to understand and need to be able to show in responses to tender documents, for example. Then on the other side, yes, I admit I did ask the question of brakes about what they're doing on the carbon agenda and reducing their environmental impact, because brakes and other suppliers to the Scottish public sector will be getting brownie points or maybe even winning contracts on the basis of what they can do to help the Scottish public sector reduce their carbon emissions, in spite of the fact that we've had the news this week about Scotland missing its climate change targets again. We are still on a very, very ambitious trajectory to be world-leading organisations in terms of the carbon and climate change agenda. Therefore, you've got CO2 and greenhouse gases at the top of that list. They're not in a hierarchy, by the way, they're just on the list. Materials, waste, as you might expect, biodiversity gets there, water, waste, and so on. Heritage, I shouldn't forget. So those are the things that I'm suggesting, and through our toolkit, I'm not just suggesting it, have developed with some of you in this room, a toolkit to help public sector bodies and potentially suppliers and contractors to focus on the appropriate things from that list in any particular contract situation. So we've just heard from brakes, it could be CO2 emissions, it could be biodiversity, it could be materials usage, it could be waste, it could be all sorts of things that they are offering alongside, who knows, fair and ethical trade and equalities, I don't know. But appropriate measures for the contract that you're dealing with. That was our remit, and that's what we've developed. Happy to talk about that outside this room. There's going to be a lot more on that coming at you in the next few months. Okay, what else is coming at you in the next few months? The combined consultation on the Scotland's Procurement Reform Act and the 3 new EU directives. Scotland did the smart thing, combined the consultation process. So we had royal assent for the Act back in June of last year, and since then, the Scottish Government has been consulting on that combined set of legislation. And in the end, we will have the requirements coming at us, I expect, towards the end of this year, and then we have to have implemented them by April of next year. Fabulous piano accompaniment, don't you think? So, this is just the added bonus. You get more from sustainable procurement. You get music as well. I'm not going to dance, don't worry. Anyway, the sustainable procurement duty. The duty is, as part of the Act, spelling out 3 particular things that all of us in this room need to be aware of. The improving stuff, not surprisingly, is all about the economic, social, environmental 3-part set that I've been describing. But also, and underline the word well-being in all of that, but also reducing inequality in the area. So I'm asking you to ask yourselves and your companies, your organisations, what are we doing to help Scottish public sector reduce inequality? Then there's the involving SMEs, so this is where we come in, small, medium-sized companies, and third sector, so supported businesses. You need to know, you probably do already know, that supported business definition is changing anyway, so the thresholds for supported business are coming down. There will be more of them potentially. We have a wider pool to fish in. And the one I want to draw your attention to is the one that people kind of dismiss. It's just one word in a box. It's about promoting innovation, and people kind of overlook it. I don't want to overlook it today because for sustainable procurement purposes, I think it offers us, all of us, suppliers and contractors in particular in the room, huge opportunities to be innovative in the products, services that we are offering to the Scottish public sector. It's in innovation, and by the way, it's not just in the Scotland Act, it's not just in Scotland's Act, it's also in the new directives. The huge opportunity that we have to come forward with innovative solutions. And I don't just mean products, don't just mean goods. Sometimes I mean services, supplying the service in place of those products. So supplying mobility instead of supplying a vehicle, supplying instead of a training course or a meeting where we all get together, doing it by video conference, teleconference, and so on. So services in place of products, that's all part of sustainable procurement. You need to be thinking innovatively and producing innovative solutions. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of this, but for those of you who are interested, I'm sure the organisers will be circulating the slides, am I right? Then you can have a look at this. But broadly speaking, what you see on the screen are all the elements of the Procurement Reform Act. And why I'm showing you this is that what you will, as suppliers and contractors to the Scottish public sector, what you'll begin to understand is these things have specific meanings, and the organisations in the public sector will have specific duties to come forward with things like a corporate procurement strategy, which will give us advance warning of what they're going to be buying and what their intended outcomes are in terms of what they're buying. And therefore, we can align ourselves to be responsive to the invitations to tender when they come out. Not only that, but Scottish public bodies are going to be required to report annually on what they've actually done to meet their own strategies. So have you delivered those community benefits? Have you satisfied your climate change targets? And so on and so on. Now, mentioning climate change, it's only one element, but you see right at the bottom of that screen, reuse, remanufacture, recycle. They've been smart in this because this piece of legislation refers to climate change legislation and the duties and the reporting requirements in that climate change legislation, saying we may decide that what we want to oblige public sector bodies to do is to buy a certain proportion of recycled, remanufactured product. They haven't gone that far yet, but what we're saying here is by buying those products, by specifying those products, by seeking those products from the marketplace, we are much more able to start helping ourselves, our organisations, and therefore Scotland as a whole, to meet its climate change targets. Individual actions, you may say, what can I do as a supplier, as a contractor, or as a public body? But if we all do our own bit, that all ramps up into a significant contribution, potentially. Okay, lots more behind that. I don't have time, so I'll move on. I've mentioned the corporate procurement strategy. That's the thing that lots of people will hone in on and say, what is the organisation that I'm seeking to do business with? What is its corporate procurement strategy saying? What is it telling me in terms of its forward plan? We mentioned earlier, I think someone mentioned wave plans. These are now available, and I would commend to all of you, not just PCS, PCST and all of that, but actually have a look at readily available forward plans. And indeed, in our packs, we have a guide for suppliers which mentions some of them. Now, if you haven't read that from cover to cover, I'd suggest at least, if you're not going to read the Act, at least read this little document. It's shorter, and it's much more to the point anyway. We've talked about sustainable procurement duty, and other people today have alluded to community benefits in procurement. I don't have a lot of time to talk about these, but they are very significant. Scotland is world leading, I would say, in delivering community benefits, and it's only going to be more so, if I can put it in those terms. Where we've been is only the start of the journey. We're going to be doing more and more community benefit delivery. Moving on for the sake of time, I'm probably, yes, just about on time. If anyone's interested in understanding what's going on behind the scenes and behind the development of these tools so that you can gear yourselves up for bidding for contracts, understand Scotland's national outcomes, Scotland's national indicators, understand the intended outcomes of Scottish Government or Scotland Excel or any of the local authorities, wherever you're bidding, understand their intended outcomes. You're going to be seeing them more and more expressed in these terms in the future. There are a list of them. They're readily available. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see them for yourselves, and you'll see how it links to what organisations are seeking in tender documents. The tools, again, for the sake of time, I won't go through them in detail, but for you to know there are a set of tools being developed. They have been developed by working groups from across the Scottish public sector. This is not something we've invented in a darkened room by any means, with Scotland Excel representatives from local authorities, but also from further and higher education, Scottish Government themselves, and from health. A prioritisation methodology so that organisations can focus their time and their effort on those things that are going to get them most value, the things that are going to deliver maximum benefit for their organisations, and frankly, to put to one side those things where they would bang their heads against the wall. They can try as long and hard as they want to, but they're never actually going to deliver much benefit. And that comes from an understanding of who you are, where you are in the supply chain, but also what chance you have of actually delivering those outcomes. It's got a sustainability test involved. It's got a life cycle impact mapping, which can help with development of procurement strategies. And I usually carry around case studies. If anyone wants to have a look at them afterwards, you know where I am. And a flexible framework that says, how well are you doing? How well are we doing? It's a self-assessment process, so it's for the organisation to assess its own progress in sustainable procurement. Where would we be in procurement without a Boston matrix, a four-box matrix? So here's one. I've taken one snapshot from the prioritisation tool, and this comes from business. It's business thinking. It's routinely applied in business, so it's nothing new. But it just does show the value of doing an assessment based on environmental and socioeconomic risk and opportunity, and plotting that against where is our scope internally to do more than we're currently doing. And that drives a set of actions. And quite frankly, I tell people, don't waste your time if what you're plotting, the products and services that you're buying, come out in the marginal box. You're probably never going to live long enough to be able to do all of that, so don't worry about it. Focus your time and effort on the top right-hand corner, you'll transform. And you'll transform markets, you'll transform behaviours, you'll transform what you're buying if you concentrate on those things. Lots more behind that. See me later if you're interested. Right, the nub of the issue, the reason some of you are here. What's all this got to do with me? What's all this got to do with, can I do more business with the Scottish public sector? Well, yes, you can. I've called it opportunities for suppliers. It's opportunities for all of us to do more business with Scottish public sector bodies, and here are some examples. The Scotland Excel, because we are here, and Karen's in the room. So any questions about this, Karen Thompson is the person to ask, and I've relabeled this the award-winning Scotland Excel Domestic Furniture and Furnishings Framework, because it has just, again, the suppliers concerned have won yet more awards just at lunchtime because of what they've done. Now, they're not doing it just for the sake of banging a drum. They're not doing it just for the sake of winning awards. The awards, I like to say, are incidental. They're a nice to have, but fundamentally, this contract, this framework, delivers on the ground real results. And it does it because of the way that the strategy was put together, the people who were involved in that process, the thinking behind going to market for this particular framework. And it really resonates with me because it covers a lot of things, but it does it in a relevant and proportionate way. And my two middle names are relevant and proportionate. It's a joke that goes around. I deliver a lot of training around the world, and especially in Scotland. We've trained 400 plus public procurers now, and relevant and proportionate is my label, because I like people to focus on those things where they can make a difference and not waste their time on the other things. So you can read for yourselves the sorts of things that people are required to do, were required to do, and continue to be required to do in this framework. Reducing waste to landfill, encouraging recycling, and so on. You can read all that. Those things were locked in because that was important to the organisation. That was what was spelt out. That's how the considerations were elaborated. So one of the things I like about this is you're making it clear, Scotland Excel in this case, and their friends, were making it clear to the market what good would look like, what the requirement was going to be, and what was the expectation of the marketplace. If you, as suppliers and contractors, are gearing yourself up and understanding what was in that case study and others, if you can respond, if you're interested in this area, to respond to those sorts of requirements, then you're gearing yourself up to win that business, and you take that experience into winning other business with other people. And we all want to do that if we're in business at all. That's the kind of thing that's going to keep us in business. The other part of sustainability, we're going to be around in 5 or 10 or 15 years' time. So I hope you're reading this as I chunter on here about all the benefits that have been delivered. They're not just environmental. You wouldn't expect them to be just environmental given the sort of contract we're talking about. Local employment and training opportunities, work experience for school leavers, improved pricing and reduced costs. It's the three-part set. The economy's there, society's there, the environment's there. Some numbers, and I'm sure these numbers ramp up all the time. So you've got full-time jobs. It's about delivering benefits to people. We're not doing it for its own sake. These are the sorts of benefits that this framework has delivered and continues to deliver. And I think I'm right in saying, Karen, that your experience will be now becoming standard practice. More people will learn from that. And so not just Scotland Excel, but other people's frameworks and contracts will begin to reflect these sorts of requirements. Success breeds success. and Randall's gone off with his gong and whatever, so more so. Three contractors on this framework, and they're all doing a good job to some extent. Donations of furniture and flooring, 145 metric tons diverted from landfill. The numbers just are there as evidence. The important message that I'm trying to get across is it can be done. It's not necessarily easy, but it's doable. And the earlier you start, the better. Now, I promised you time for questions and answers, so what I'm going to do is show you, just because I can't leave out social enterprises and supported business, show you some other examples and just name check Kibble, because again, they were award winners today, so I'm cross-referencing to people who've won awards. It's not just me saying it, in other words. If people want more information on these, they are readily available on the Ready for Business website, so just have a look on there for much more information on things like Highland Council's Reboot, which is using ICT equipment, reuse, remanufacture, refurbishment with a lot of social benefits added in. Okay. I know it was a gallop through, but I hope it was coherent enough for you to be able to ask questions or make comments.